Whoops. Okay. The mic's on now. Welcome, folks. I see that we have quite a few people here already. I appreciate you joining us after the premiere of episode 315 in our fentanyl poisoning series. Ashley Wabi. It, it's a it's a powerful story, and I think that about all of our stories. They're all powerful. They all have strong messages. They all have some things in common, and they all have some things that are unique just to this story. And so for starters, maybe some of you could share with me what stood out to you about this story in particular. We did it from a production standpoint. We did a Dino. You're in Houston. What part of Houston? From a production standpoint, we did a thing we hadn't done before. We had a behind the scenes view where the audience got to see Debbie looking over at sorry, got to see Debbie looking over at a poster of Ashley that was in a chair near where she was talking. As in the course of the interview, Debbie looked over at Ashley's picture kind of often, and I felt like it would be a good idea to be able to let the audience see where she's looking when she looks off because it helps with the story. Hello, Angie. Thank you for being here. I'm very, very glad you're here. And very sorry for your loss. Is your mother here with us too? So, Dino, where in Houston are you? Oh, north side where a lot of fentanyl is at. So, tell me a little bit more. Okay, hold on. I have to send something. I have to send a text message right here. 249. Yes. We're down in the Clear Lake area. We're on the opposite side of town. It's here too. It's everywhere. And so Triad area of North Carolina. So Dino, do you have? Is there a story off of 249? Should we come out there with our camera? Houston is what we would call low hanging fruit. We don't have to get a hotel room to go someplace in Houston, and we don't have to make travel arrangements or any of that. Angela is the mother. The storyteller was the grandmother. The storyteller was Angela's mother. So let me send this. So, audience, those of you who watch the story, do you remember the short little clips that I'm talking about, where you see a bit of the camera and you see that there's a poster in a chair? What was your impression of that? Did that help you understand where she was looking and all that good stuff? That's just the filmmaker in me wanting to know if it worked the way I thought it worked. And so my phone is going off here again. And okay, that's good. Positive Vibe says I came in late. Well, it's in the wee hours of the morning where you're at, Scotland, right? Right. That's where you said, right? Scotland. Yeah, I've been to Aberdeen and I've been to Great Yarmouth. Great Yarmouth. That's, yeah, Great Yarmouth. Correct. I'm trying to get my mom on the chat now. She was the storyteller. Yeah, I did text her a link. So she has a link if she does it by phone. If she's getting onto it with her computer, got to get the link over to the computer or go to our channel to find the link. And if she's watching on a smartphone or if she's watching on a smart TV, she can bring the live event up on the TV. You still have to use the phone to participate in the chat to be able to type out messages and that kind of thing. And so that's a solution. Kind of depends on what her viewing solution is. Aberdeen, hour and a half away from me in Perthshire. Uh, Brianna says I was listening mostly, watching like 50% of the time. I don't really notice, didn't really notice the camera shot. You know, okay, we hear that. Yeah, I love listening to your stories. I hear that a lot, and uh, it's like a kind of a good news bad news thing to me. It's great that people are hearing the stories, that they're receiving the stories. But when we do the editing, it is about it is as much about the visual as it is the spoken words. And so I hear, well, I listened. Oh, come on. Because we spend a lot of time editing to make it sound right and look right, to make it flow. And but grateful if you're listening, grateful if you're watching, whatever. So, Rain's Mama, here's Carla. Thank you for joining us, Carla. Always great to see you here. I appreciate you being here. The other thing that stood out to me about this story is law enforcement. We have quite a few stories where the storyteller is very critical of law enforcement. I'm sure it's wonderful. And deservedly so. Some law enforcement, I want to be careful here because we at Texas Pictures are certainly friends of law enforcement. We have done a lot of work with law enforcement, primarily in the Houston area. The Houston Police Department is one of our clients. We've made several documentaries with the Houston Police Department. And we've also done quite a few projects with Mothers Against Drunk Driving that involved us working with law enforcement agencies all across the country in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Baltimore, Maryland, Tennessee, Oklahoma, other places. But quite a few. I have my own bulletproof vest. It's way cool. I put it on. I get taller. I think my IQ goes down a little bit, but I get taller, so it's kind of a fair trade, right? So I don't want to be too critical of law enforcement, but we are critical when it's called for, and this certainly seems like it's called for. There's been other times we've been critical of law enforcement. There's a story on our channel called No Justice for Andron, and it is extremely critical of the Austin Police Department for good reason. Good reason. But the thing that stands out to me about law enforcement and this story in particular is that cop out excuse, cop out, it's like a pun. So that cop out excuse of, well, the district attorney's office isn't going to prosecute, so there's no reason to. For starters, that's mighty convenient. That's a whole lot less work on the law enforcement officer that's involved, or officers that are involved, or the agency that's involved. But that's not how their job works. It's not how the district attorney's office job works either. Law enforcement works for us when a law enforcement officer takes that oath. In the oath, there is a reference to upholding and defending the Constitution of the United States. That's us. That's all of us. The Constitution is our document. That is identified at the very beginning. It's three words that are bigger than any of the other words on the whole document. They're right up front, those first three words. It says, "We the people." That's us. And law enforcement agencies should be accountable to us. We are, in fact, their customers. And so, some sort of excuse like the district attorney's office won't prosecute, so there's no reason for us to do anything. That's not true at all. I don't do your job, even if the next person in the chain doesn't do their job. And everything that I just said about law enforcement applies to district attorneys too. They have an obligation to the people who elected them, as well as everybody who didn't vote for them. They have an obligation to enforce the law, to prosecute, not pick and choose which laws they prosecute and which laws they're just, it's not worth it. When a district attorney just picks some laws that they're not going to enforce anymore, that's not the job of a district attorney. That's making law. And that is far outside of their authority. Making law, a district attorney arbitrarily making a law because it creates too much workload for them? How does that work? That is so counter to the Constitution. It baffles me that any district attorney anywhere in the country could get away with making law. All right, so I had my little rant there. So let me see where I'm at. Yes, I saw a reference, a question about the self-cleaning coffee mugs. They're just like this. And there's a link on our website to our merchandise store. These are expensive. They're like $16 or something for one, but they're self-cleaning as long as you just drink black coffee. Never need to be washed. I see where I'm at. So I saw that Brad's here. Good to see you, Brad. We got to get together soon. I don't know when I'm coming through Oklahoma City again. I hope soon, though, as long as it's not snowing. Positive Vibes says, yes, law enforcement, same over here. I could resonate with the Ashley's Nana so much to do with the cops. And Risk is here. MD Pooh. MD Pooh is in Maryland Pooh. Okay. Welcome. Glad you're here. We've shot stories in Maryland ah, a couple of times. At one time, it was right outside of Baltimore, at a small town, like a satellite town around Baltimore, and we shot in a Chamber of Commerce building. And that's where we interviewed April Babcock about her son and about her organization, Lost Voices of Fentanyl. And that is where we interviewed uh, other people too. And gosh, if anyone who we talked to in Maryland is here and I haven't remembered your name, I'm very sorry. We've met so many people, and Maryland was quite a while back. And so let me see, where else am I at? If I've missed anybody's comments or questions, please repeat them. I see that some of these have gotten by me. Risk is here. Thank you for being here, Risk. Glad you're here. Da, 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 da. And Carla is here. Carla, you know, you're doing things, Carla. You're making a difference. You're making a contribution. You're making a contribution for rain. You're really hmm, you're really doing amazing stuff. Working through it or with your pain, however the appropriate way to describe it is, I don't know. But you're making a difference, and whether that's any consolation or not, it matters. It's important, and it would certainly be important to Rain. And so I just feel like I should tell you that now and then. I see the original law, the 2019 law, made it a Class C felony to sell a qualifying drug, including an opioid, cocaine, methamphetamine. I think the premise is hitched on sale of drugs. Well, we're not lawyers. I don't know. Do we have any lawyers in here? If we do, they're probably not going to speak up. Maybe because there's no money in it. But a lawyer would better be able to interpret that, and a prosecuting attorney would have a different interpretation than a defense attorney would. So so there is always flexibility and interpretation in the way that the law works, and it's designed to work that way. It's brilliant in its design. The United States is one of the youngest countries on the planet, but it's one of the oldest governments on the planet. The government in the UK is nothing like it was when the United States began. The government in the UK was different then. And the same for most countries. So there's something wonderfully impressive about the Constitution, despite the lack of commitment to honoring it by some law enforcement agencies. And I really stress some. You know, we also have a series on our channel that's called American Peace Officer. And the goal of that series is to humanize law enforcement, to present stories from behind the scenes, stories that officer experiences that have happened on the job that have stuck with them through the years. Some are tragedies, some are incredible victories, all that. We haven't got a lot of stories in that series because There's extra challenges with them because law enforcement officers are accountable to their agency as they should be. And so when we do one of those stories, we have to get authorization from command staff and approval from command staff typically before the story is published. So it's more complex, but it's still very much a thing for us. Frank, Carla says it was 78 degrees in Oklahoma City today. I think in Houston it was like 80. Uh, that's not, the air conditioner isn't working in my car right now. But it's December, so you would think that wouldn't matter, but it does. So, so that's a pretty frustrating circumstance. I've kept you in my thoughts. Happy to see you here, Risk says to Carla, I believe. And so if I look at the weather tomorrow, the high today was 82 degrees in Houston. Tomorrow, the high is going to be 80 degrees. North Korea has a different government. Yeah, they sure do. South Korea probably does too. There was a lot of monarchies when the United States began that are not around anymore. Or even if they are around, they have a very different role. The monarchy in the UK doesn't have a critical government role any longer, but it did 200 years ago. So, Merry Christmas to everyone, for sure. Maxwell House. No, no, actually, this is Starbucks espresso roast. Uh, Freshly ground, as in, 30 minutes ago, it was ground, made into an Americano. And my mom is here, and she says the warm weather is wonderful. Yeah, yeah, it is. I'll have to. I wish I had it queued up. I could show you guys the pictures that we took when we were in Kansas last January, I believe it was. Burr. It was pretty rough. And a year ago in November, we were in Anchorage. I would not recommend that. Anchorage in November it's a little bit brisk. It snowed. We were there for a couple of weeks, and uh, gosh, Brad, I see. Carlos says Brad lost his best dog friend yesterday. That's terrible. That's terrible. I saw a picture of you with a dog on Facebook yesterday, I believe. Very sorry, Brad. And that can be an incredibly rough thing, losing a pet. A lot, and I think in some ways, in some ways, it makes it worse because it's hard to sort out how to grieve the loss of a pet, especially among a crowd like this. It's it's tough. It's very much. a do it alone thing. Yeah, very sorry, Brad. Rambo. You didn't you didn't dress him up, did you? I'm sure that I'm sure Rambo was a real blessing for you. This kind of constant, dependable, loyal, unconditional love that's there that you can count on. Yeah, Brad. Brad, I loved Anchorage too. We had it really good. We actually stayed in a town outside of Anchorage. It was about 45 minutes from Anchorage called Girdwood, which was a ski community or is a ski community. And we were there before that season actually began. So the town was kind of subdued, like getting ready for the big vacation rush. And really enjoyed the time there. Yes, Evan, Evan, 8333. Tough to go to work after losing a pet. There's no bereavement for pets. Yeah, yeah, that's a thing. I think. Oh yeah, so when we were in Anchorage, we did a couple of ride-alongs with law enforcement, and we made a documentary about fentanyl in Alaska. While we were there, we worked with local the Anchorage Police Department, and we also worked with the state police and a little bit with the DEA and all of that. We really got some wonderful cooperation from everyone. Yes, positive vibes in Scotland. Yeah, it's important to get some sleep and but thank you for joining us and please stay with it. If you can, we'd love to come to the UK and do some stories as well. I know things are very different there, but we have a few followers in the UK who pretty regularly send us emails and updates about what kind of things are happening over there and what's similar in terms of uh, fentanyl beginning to show up over there. Not anywhere near to the significance that it is in the U.S. yet, but could be. So yeah, certainly eager for an opportunity to come out there. We're also working on having a storytelling summit in in um, in Canada. We're working on that. Not in a big hurry because it's winter, but we're working on that. So good night. Positive vibes. Brad says, "Isn't it strange how loyal a dog can be?" It is. It is. It's such a deep, absolutely, absolutely permanent kind of loyalty. Absolutely unwavering kind of a always count on it kind of commitment to you. So it's wonderful. Very very sorry for your loss, Brad. You guys realize on like on broadcast TV, the host gets to do this, drink something or drink coffee or whatever during the commercial break, and we don't have those. At least I don't know when they happen, and so I never get that. I never get that break. So like we've been here for over 30 minutes now, and I've been talking kind of nonstop, and need to take a break now and then. He was 13, and there comes a time when the quality of life isn't good. Yeah, that's tough. If I, yeah, it's sorry, Brad. I get what you're saying. Hello, Kimberly. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you here. Hope you're feeling better. I remember you saying that you've been ill for the last couple of weeks and kind of staying at home, and hope you're feeling better. So it's also very cool that we've seen a couple of new names in here, like Positive Vibes was a new name. Evan, yeah, that's an M. Evan, 8333. You seem like a new name as well. If there's any new folks who have questions about our channel or about the stories that we make or any of that, feel free to put them out there, and uh, I'd be glad to answer them. If we can. So good to hear you're feeling better, Kimberly. That's always good to hear. I can't imagine how. Uh, I can't imagine it. Now I know there's so many people out, Kimberly. I know there are so many people out there who count on the kind of work that you do in the Memphis area. That then you got it's got to be kind of frustrating to deal with being sick and knowing there's all of this stuff that you want to get done out there or that you need to get done, or knowing that people are counting on seeing you or hoping to see you. Eve M. Yeah. You'd think I would have been able to figure that out, but no. So Eve, we'll go with Eve. That's good. Yeah, our dogs are killers. We have three. One is I don't know, 13, 14 years old, and the other two are both around 5 years old. And so they're a kick. Eve says yes. I'm new, although I was already subscribed when this live came across my feed. Well, thank you for joining us. The lives are kind of different, kind of weird, and uh, and very glad you're here. What do you say about the situation in Philadelphia, Kensington Avenue? Says Petra. We'll just say Petra. Okay. And the thing in Kensington has gotten to be so famous or so infamous for that. You would think that just just the amount of exposure that Kensington has received would lead the city of Philadelphia to figure out a solution, to work harder to figure out some sort of solution for Kensington. That the just the embarrassment isn't the right word, but just the public nature of the public nature of the crisis is so extreme. Kensington is the most known, I think. It's famous for that. No city wants to be famous for that. And a lot of other cities have similar circumstances somewhere. In Houston, it's at least used to be on. We had someone here earlier who's out off of 249 on the north side, where yeah, it has a reputation for being bad. And then, like on the edge of downtown, where there used to be a Sears store, there's an area there that is really bad. That has on a smaller scale the same kind of circumstances Kensington, with people falling out and people standing there doing the zombie thing, doing drug deals in the open and all that good stuff. So as far as what I think about Kensington, it's I suppose the exposure that it gets is one way to bring about some additional awareness. When we were shooting stories in Albuquerque, we rode with the Bernalino County Sheriff's Office, which is the county that Albuquerque is in. And they told us about a street, I think it's called Central Avenue in Albuquerque, that's sort of the same kind of thing as Kensington is in Philadelphia. And it's not as densely packed. It's a longer road, and the tragedies are scattered along the road for a longer space. So, Eve, is it the fentanyl stories that you've seen on our channel, or maybe some of the other stories as well? We have a whole series on addiction recovery, and we have a series on human trafficking, another one on domestic violence, and we have a series on cannabis induced psychosis. See, look at there. Carla says, Brad, when are you going to the Houston area to visit Glenn? Yeah, come on down. Well, you can meet you can meet our dogs. What's the traffic like? The traffic's great in Houston. Where is the guy out off of 249? He could tell you all about how wonderful the traffic is in Houston. You could. So I'm not sure if I really answered the question about Kensington, Philadelphia. I tried to. I don't understand how more isn't being done about it. Eve says it may have been the fentanyl. I'll have to check out your content to see what it was. So I'll tell you guys about the series that are on our channel, because the the fentanyl stories are 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 I guess you would call them a top priority. But there is, sorry, I'm looking. I'm looking. There is recovery stories, human trafficking. There's a series American Peace Officer that we talked about a little bit earlier. And there is domestic violence and cannabis induced psychosis. And I'm probably forgetting stuff. I also like to remind people that we have a couple of stories in the Fentanyl series that are about dealing with grief. And they're told by this wonderful licensed professional counselor. Her name's Heather Lambert. And she's our friend, and she is a wonderful person with great insight into how grief works. And the thing about dealing with grief is there is no right or wrong way to deal with grief. There's just what there's just your way. There's just what you do. There is the choice of dealing with it or not dealing with it, and that's a right and wrong thing. You need to deal with it. You need to address it. You need to kind of honor it even. If you've lost a loved one, it makes sense to want to mourn the loss of the loved one, to honor the loss of the loved one, and that's going to kind of just become part of who you are now. Maybe embrace it even. But keep moving forward because your loved one would consider that just extremely important. That is one of the best, most important ways you can honor that loved one is by moving forward, doing things that honor them. Eve says it's pretty bad here in Tucson, in the homeless population especially, but of course they do it out in the open. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Isn't that telling about a society that the users have such a disregard for law enforcement that they don't even worry about it, and that law enforcement has such a disregard for drug laws, they don't worry about it. And that's kind of ugly, kind of shameful even. Kimberly says I'm working on getting stable housing for one of my unhoused clients. That's such a noble, awesome, important thing to do. Even if it's just helping helping one person helps everyone. One way or another, it helps everyone. Super May, Super May says, I hate the way the cops, authorities disrespect those lost and their loved ones. Fentanyl is the evil drug. Yeah, the law enforcement, that disrespectful thing, they don't all do it. They don't all. There's plenty of law enforcement out there that are very committed into helping people, very committed into doing the right thing just because it's the right thing. Lots of them that I've met, lots of them. Here's the thing about that. We've worked with a lot of law enforcement. And so, because we've worked with law enforcement, we get assigned to officers that are accomplished, as officers that are the best and the brightest. So we kind of we're gonna meet the good ones more so than the ones that are kind of just doing it for the pension. There is the respect thing. Law enforcement should treat everyone with respect. At least give as good as they get. And a lot of times, it seems to me that one of the reasons law enforcement gets treated poorly by some people in the public is because they have negative experiences with law enforcement. Some that could have been well earned, but others that maybe not. How far away am I from Galveston, Texas? About 30 minutes. Galveston is from where we're at. Galveston is a reasonable destination just for dinner. So, not far at all. And actually, talking about Galveston, my great grandfather was they call them BOIs, stands for Born on the Island. My grandfather was. My great grandfather was an immigrant from England who moved to Galveston in the 1880s. So, Glenn, if a person smoked laced fentanyl with marijuana, does it make them not to sleep? Huh. I don't, I don't, I don't know. I don't think I don't feel like I'm qualified to answer that question accurately. Hmm, sorry. A little weird thing over there. It'll be fine. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's some other people in the group. How do you stop the drug lords from Mexico? I have the perfect answer for that, Brad. I do, and it's one of those elephant in the room kind of answers. The way you stop the drug lords in Mexico is you stop giving them money. Stop buying the product, and they go out of business, just like any other business. Stop buying it. Stop supporting them with purchases. And that's what American consumers are doing. They're funding the drug lords by being their customers. How is this? I don't get how this is so complicated. Stop buying. People stop buying. If people stop buying, the problem goes away. Just like with any business. I'm sure that 100 years ago there were some companies that were making kerosene lanterns that aren't around anymore because there's no demand anymore. Because something better came along. Eve says Galveston by Glenn Campbell is a very pretty song. Yeah, that's during. I'm pretty sure that song was Vietnam soldier inspired. I clean my gun and think of Galveston. Galveston is a Galveston's a wonderful town. It's a wonderful town to explore. I really love living so close to Galveston. With it being so close, I love the idea of going down there and exploring. Rarely does it happen. But when I was in high school, that was the summer thing. All as summer gets closer and closer, all your friends in Cooler are saying, "Yeah, I'm going to be in Galveston every weekend," and then it never works out that way. But that was the thing. Hello, Joanne, Joan, Joan, Joan Henderson. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you here. And my neighbor smokes two dead skunks. That's such a harsh. I like that. So Galveston was hit by a hurricane in 1900 that was devastating. It killed over 6,000 people, destroyed the city before the hurricane. Galveston was the largest city in Texas, bigger than Houston, bigger than Dallas, bigger than Austin or San Antonio. Galveston was the largest city in Texas, largest port along the Texas Gulf Coast. And the hurricane of 1900 changed all of that. So, yeah, glad to see you here, Joan. Appreciate you joining us. Where is Brenda? And I saw earlier someone asked about Nux. So, Brad, I don't know if I answered your question the way you were hoping I would, but that's really it. And that doesn't just fix fentanyl; that fixes everything. If we can do something to stop being customers, all the illicit drugs will go away because there's no market. If there's no market, where's the why would that happen? Why would anybody make drugs, sell drugs, whatever, if there's not a market for it? What's the point? So here's a question for you guys. We had a different kind of story on our channel that featured a nonprofit organization in Galveston that not really in Galveston that was working in Galveston in the story that we published. It's called Layers of Love Foundation that works with Ronald McDonald House in Galveston and elsewhere. Ronald McDonald's houses all over the country. They work with them to provide different things. There's a lot of awesome stories in that, and we thought it would be cool to have some sort of story that it has a kind of uplifting message to it during the Christmas season. And so that was the story that we came up with. Didn't get a lot of feedback from anyone. It hasn't really gotten a lot of attention. It hasn't gotten a lot of views, and that's okay. That's okay. We're still very glad to have it on our channel and do what we can to bring more awareness about this wonderful organization that does stuff to help families that are staying with Ronald McDonald House. So I guess I don't know. Did any of you guys see that or not? That's okay too. What I do. I don't, I do not understand some of the messages that I get from YouTube while I'm doing this. I suppose I probably really shouldn't shouldn't share that with you guys, but why not? Eve says I'll check it out though. Okay, check it out. What I miss, Eve? What are you gonna check out? You said, oh wow, the Galveston thing. Yeah, the Galveston. It it has a kind of a rich history. It's a cool town to explore. It's a port. There's a lot of cruise lines that leave out of Galveston now, and they all pretty much go to the same places. But it's cool because it's for us. It's sort of like local history. So it's cool to have a place. You know, 30 minutes away, I can be looking at an ocean or Gulf. I can be looking at the Gulf of Mexico. I could be in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's warm enough where it wouldn't be brutal to do it even now. And and so there's all of the things that you would associate having access to an ocean that go with that. And plus, there's a lot of awesome restaurants and different kinds of things to see in Galveston. And I know a little bit about the history of Galveston because of my grandfather, because he was born there and made a documentary about his father's life, my great grandfather. Made it, it's on our channel. It's called The First American James. His grandfather on my mother's side. And it's an interesting story. It's on our channel. It's a 30-minute long documentary that I made in 1993 after my grandmother died. And there was this history my grandfather had written about his father's life, along with a whole bunch of pictures. And so it seemed like most of the work was done. I was wrong about that. It took about 9 months to make the documentary, working on it as I could while working a regular full time job and all that stuff. I was single at the time, and it was a much more constructive way to spend my time than I otherwise might have occupied myself. So, it worked out, and it was cool because it was like having an adult relationship with my grandfather that I never really had, because he died when I was 21, and at that point in your life, you're paying less attention to your family and more attention to this new world of freedoms that's opening up in front of you. Plus, you're in college, if you go to college, and all that cool stuff. So, working with the document that he wrote which was only I want to say it was like 4 pages front and back, and maybe longer. No, I don't really remember now. Somewhere around here, I have a folder full of information about it, but it was fascinating. One glaring truth that came out from that and from the adversity that my great grandfather and the whole family went through, like surviving the hurricane and losing businesses and building businesses, and is that we, all of us, we're kind of wimps now. The kind of things that they went through, that they just handled it because That's what you do. That's what you have to do. We don't do that. Well, they can't make me come into work if the air conditioner's not working. Well, you know what? Air conditioning is kind of a new thing. So there's some people out there that just total whims. Okay, let me catch up with what's going on here as I just ramble endlessly, I guess. Deborah Thatcher, hello from Arizona. Thank you for these stories. Nothing beats the point harder than having the families tell it. Yes, firsthand information really, really matters a lot. Firsthand, and it's one of those funny things that I think that, of course, facts are important. Facts facts matter a lot, but they only matter if the audience believes the facts, and they only matter if the audience listens. And nobody goes to YouTube or turns on the TV with the goal of finding facts. Maybe some people do it with the goal of learning, but that's kind of different. You still have to be captivated. Yeah. Deborah says she's in the Scottsdale ghetto. The Scottsdale ghetto? Is that a thing? That sounds kind of interesting. It sounds like there's probably some cool stories there. The Scottsdale ghetto. It could be the title, Scottsdale ghetto. Scottsdale ghetto. I can't. Hard to say. I was just kidding. Okay. Yeah, it seems like Scottsdale ghetto is, and it seems kind of like saying Beverly Hills slum. Deborah says I live in South Scottsdale, not where all the big houses. The big houses. Yeah. I don't know. Scottsdale is a cool place. I haven't been there in a while, but I have been there before. It is. I love just the greater Southwest in general. To me, love really. Despite the places where we've done our storytelling summits so far tend to be more Eastern, and I hope that in 2026 we can do more stories on the what happened here. Good grief, I screwed up. Okay, there we go. And we can do more stories on the mm, 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 mm. In the Western United States. I can show you guys uh, the map. This is the places where we have had storytelling summits so far, and this is over the course of the last 3 years, last 2.5 years. And so there's like 4 locations in Florida, a couple of locations in North Carolina, a couple of locations in Virginia. There's Mississippi, of course, quite a few locations in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California, Colorado, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Kentucky, and Tennessee. Uh, So round, round, get around, we get around. So, so great question. The heat is no joke. It has to be a joke because it helps you deal with it, I would think. Brad says if he lived in Arizona, it'd have to be Flagstaff. Why is that, Brad? Is Flagstaff special to you? Is there uh, something special about Flagstaff? So, Glenn, how can I do a summit on cannabis and fentanyl together? Is really the way that it works. That's a great question, Kim. The way that our storytelling summits work is they don't start out intentionally ever as being specifically about one topic. Virtually all of our stories involve fentanyl related stories. All of our storytelling summits involve fentanyl related stories. But a lot of times during the storytelling summits, it'll be a story, a story about a loss to fentanyl, and then it'll be a story about addiction recovery, or a story about human trafficking, or a story about cannabis induced psychosis or domestic violence. And then the next one will be another fentanyl story. And so it really kind of boils down to who signs up and who wants to share a story. When we have a storytelling summit anywhere, it begins with one local person who becomes the event coordinator, and the event coordinator has the responsibility of finding a place where we can record stories. That's really the big thing, and the place that we record stories has to be a large enough area. We really need two rooms. One room is the room where we record the interviews, and it needs to be large enough to accommodate a full size SUV. And we're just using that as a point of reference. We're not saying we're going to put a car in the room. Just that a full size SUV should fit easily in the room and still be able to walk all the way around it. And that's enough space to set up our set for the interviews with the lights and camera and all that. And so we need a space that has that kind of room and an adjacent room where people can wait. And in that room where people wait, that's where they fill out their forms. Forms. There's one form, and it's a release, and it's also our big point of reference. I have several of them sitting right here that have been filled out by storytellers, and this is where all of the critical information for a story comes from. That this is where we refer to this during the course of the editing. So the form is vitally important because this is how we confirm the spellings and dates and all of that kind of information. And so in that other room, they fill out the forms and they meet each other and they bond. We talked a little bit about it in one of the recent lives. I remember, and what happens in that room? What we were talking about a name for the room, and it seems like uh, it seems like sanctuary is a good name for the room. There was a couple of other names that came up. I'm sure some of you guys can remind me what the other name ideas were. If not, I know that Brenda. Next time we see Brenda, Brenda will be able to remind me because she's on that. And so real magic happens in that other room. And so the only other thing that's critical is that we can leave the majority of our equipment set up in the room for the stories overnight. So the room should be, we should be able to lock it. and our gear be safe. We don't leave the camera, but we leave just about everything else. And so once that's set up, the local coordinator starts finding people in the area who are interested in sharing their stories. Typically, the local coordinator is already connected with some sort of local organization that addresses the topic that's important to them, fentanyl or uh, human trafficking, cannabis induced psychosis, those kind of topics. And once we set a date, then we will announce the event on our channel and we will announce the event on Facebook. And we have the Facebook group that I mentioned earlier, or I mentioned during the live event or during the premiere, that uh, we have a group, and so we'll announce the event, and other people will sign up. And so the goal is for any kind of storytelling summit to go for at least 2 days and to involve 6 to 8 stories per day. That's what we find to be a good formula. More than that, and I'll start getting tired. Each interview goes for somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour, and after 7 or 8 of those, I'm kind of beat. Grieving and healing room. Yeah, that's what it is. I feel like there was a name somebody in the last live event came up with. It was good, and I can't remember what it was. Don't know. And so to make a summit happen, the local person has to be the one to find a location for us to do our interviews, because the local person has the connections and has the understanding of the area, and it works out best that way. We don't pay anything. We don't charge anything. And typically we cover our travel expenses and all of that. There's no kind of, we're always open to donations to help with the travel expenses, but they rarely happen and they're certainly not mandatory. We don't expect them. And there's more information on our website, texas-pictures.com, about how bringing a storytelling summit to your area works. And it kind of outlines the requirements, much the way I just did. And there is some extra information, and there's a video, an interview with a local coordinator from Maryville, California, maybe someplace outside of Sacramento. And and so there's a lot more information there. And anyone who'd like to try to set up a storytelling summit in whatever area, whether it's Scottsdale, Arizona, or Scotland, we're always open to it. So, Brad, what's special? Douglas, Arizona gets kind of hot in the summer too, says Kelly. Kelly, I feel like that's a new name here. Are you new to these live events? If so, welcome. Well, whether you're new or not, welcome. Glad you're here. And so, where am I at here? I swear, I just heard a gunshot outside. Probably not, but Deborah asks, "Do colleges charge to use their spaces?" It depends. We've recorded stories. I feel like there's only been one. We used a space in Jacksonville University to record interviews. I believe 7 or 8 months ago now, and it was something. The local coordinator was an employee there, and so she was well connected within the university and able to make it happen. A lot of times, the space that we use is is a church setting where we do the interviews in the sanctuary. We did that in Oklahoma and San Antonio and quite a few other locations. We've also used Chamber of Commerce settings, uh, VFW halls, hotel conference rooms. We even did a summit at a funeral home once, and that was a little bit of a trigger. So we have been here. Kimberly asked Glenn, "Did you drink wine during Christmas?" Brad said, "Eggnog." Now I don't know that I've ever tried eggnog. It just sounds. There's something about the name. Just sounds gross. Like eggplant. That sounds gross too. So no, didn't drink any wine during Christmas. So we have been here almost 80 minutes now, and it's going to be time for us to wrap it up in a moment here. That was a weird sound. Yeah, it just happens now and then. I hear these weird sounds in my ear. Don't know what they are. What I hear in this ear is computer sounds, the sound from this microphone, the sound that's going out to you guys, and that's about it. But once in a while, I don't know. I'll hear these weird sounds and don't know what they are, and I have no one here to ask, so it's just me, and so I try to figure it out as best I can, but I see no clues on any of the screens in front of me that'll give me an idea of what just happened. So we're going to wrap it up in about 5 minutes. Deborah Thatcher says, "Thank you, Glenn." Well, thank you, Deborah. Glad glad you're here with us. I really encourage all of you guys to explore some of the other content. Those of you that are familiar with our Fentanyl series, there's other content on our channel too. And much of it is in the same basic kind of format as as the fentanyl stories, the same direct to the camera interview kind of style, but not all. So I'm going to share some links with you guys. So we have a series of domestic violence stories, and here is the link for that series right there. Hmm. I get it. Okay, hold on. What did I share? Domestic violence. Main character. I'm in Canada, and hearing about lace cannabis vape cartridges is scary. Is that just an American thing? Wolfgang Truth. Okay, I'll stay a little bit longer. That is a there's a song by the Zodiacs. Oh, won't you stay? Yeah. So okay, so I was saying there's the link for domestic violence, and here is a link for our addiction recovery series. Our addiction recovery series. I am really overjoyed to have the addiction recovery series on our channel. Addiction recovery, it's such an important thing to me to be able to point when when someone comments on one of the cannabis stories or one of the fentanyl stories about how they are in recovery or new to recovery or wishing they were in recovery, and to be able to point to them where this where we have this addiction recovery series. That's a big deal to me because there's over 55 stories in the addiction recovery series, and it's still growing. We do recovery stories whenever we do fentanyl stories. We When we do the summits, we record recovery stories as well, and we've added a few new ones just over the Christmas holidays, over this holiday season. And being able to direct people who say that they are in recovery or people who just wish they were in recovery, to be able to direct them to stories that offer hope and stories that have a happy ending is such a big deal. So I'm very grateful for that series. So next link, so the next link is cannabis induced psychosis. There's that series. And what to say about the cannabis induced psychosis series? It is such important information. So important to understand the potential dangers of cannabis. What's fascinating to me is the volume of resistance that these stories meet, the volume of cannabis users who leap to the defense of cannabis in a very juvenile kind of I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of like it kind of reminds me of in middle school when you get in an argument and the only response the other person can come up with is no, and that's really about it. That the a substantial amount of the commenters who leap to the defense of cannabis, just immediately discrediting in their own minds anything that is said in the story, is fascinating to me because it's a storyteller's account, and they just immediately go, well, there must have been another substance involved, or they'll say, no, what about alcohol? Uh, and another thing is the comments from people that are defending cannabis tend to be more likely, much more likely to contain misspelled words and nearly incoherent kind of sentence structure sometimes. It's a bizarre thing. It's the misspelled words is It's just a little bit comical. You're not making your case if you can't spell the words you're choosing to use to communicate your case. And if you can't structure a sentence right, you ought to just be quiet. And nobody leaps to the defense of alcohol, but cannabis is somehow different. It's weird. So there's that story, cannabis. Human trafficking series. I don't really remember how many there are of those. I think I believe there's 7 or 8. Here is the link to the human trafficking series. Glenn, I'm going to watch the new series that I missed. It sounds great, Kimberly. We have quite a few series for you to explore. Don't feel like you need to work your way through all of them at once. And we have a series called. I'm sorry. I'm just updating some stuff in the uh, link here. And I mentioned we have a series called American Peace Officer, and I hope this link. Oh, come on. And there is American Peace Officer. Let's see if that works. Yeah, yeah, it works. Okay. I thought the link worked weird. So there is 7 videos in the American Peace Officer series. All of the series that are on our channel are still active. We're always up for adding another story in any of these categories, any of these series that we have working on our channel. So I'm sure I probably missed one. Domestic violence, is that? Yeah, that was the first one. Okay. So let me get back to the display I'm supposed to be on here because I'm running behind. They act the age of their shoe size. Yeah, yeah, some of them do. Thank you, Deborah. They're all good. I appreciate that. And there is also it's not really a series because there's not a consistent format from one story to the next, but there is a set of stories that have to do with impaired driving on our channel as well. And that's a gigantically important topic. We've done a lot of work with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and a lot of work with the Houston Police Department, DWI Task Force, and other agencies in relation to DWI specifically, or impaired driving. And I say impaired driving because DWI is like a local or regional term. In some parts of the country, they call it DUI. In some parts of the country, they call it DWI. I don't know why there's a distinction, but they are. Some people shouldn't consume cannabis. The vast majority of users don't have psychosis, though. Yet many experience other side effects. Yeah, it's we don't really we don't really have a stance on it. It is unrealistic to think it's going to go away. It's probably unrealistic to think it's going to ever be illegal again as well. It can be realistic to think that the demand can be reduced through awareness. There are things that cannabis does that people don't really understand in terms of affecting mental health. That when you hear the term pothead, that conjures up a mental image in your brain that is based primarily on your own personal experience with people who use a lot of cannabis. And there's a reason that that happens in your brain because there is some consistencies to what a pothead is like. Paranoia is one of those behavioral things that become more and more common as people use more and more cannabis. That I've noticed personally with people I know who regularly use cannabis. Not all of them, of course, but it's a more common thing. We all have this mental image of what a pothead is based on what our life experience has been with regard to people you would categorize in your brain as being a pothead. So, so when it comes to cannabis, there's gigantic mountains of evidence about how dangerous it can be for certainly dangerous for anyone under the age of 25 because it has an impact on a developing brain. So there's there's people who will also say that there hasn't been much research, that there's no evidence of cannabis induced psychosis. Another big one is cannabis hyperemesis. Yes, cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, which is uh, frequent uncontrollable vomiting caused by cannabis. I think that the definition uncontrollable vomiting. When is vomiting controllable? I don't know. So frequent vomiting, and it's called scromiting by some people because it is screaming and vomiting at the same time. So wow, we kind of took a dark turn there, but it's a thing, and so let me just I'm going to share. Uh, I'm going to share a link from Scientific American about cannabis-induced psychosis. So there's that link. There's an opportunity to learn something if you feel like engaging in a reading assignment. But that's one of the problems, especially with a topic like cannabis, when when there's a whole lot of passion and neither side really wants to offer up any credibility to the other side. Both sides are doing it. That, to be fair, the side that is opposed to cannabis legalization and the side, which is also the side that warns about using cannabis, they have all the facts. Problem is the side that is pro cannabis legalization, they feel like they have facts too. And regardless of whether they have facts or they just have anecdotal personal experience, that's credible. And until the two sides figure out how to effectively reach the other side, it's not going to get any better. Neither side is going to come closer because the pro cannabis side is going to be very, very defensive, very closed off. And both sides will engage in that same level of confirmation bias that makes them immediately put up a wall for anything that considers whichever side they're not on, whichever side they're opposed to. Anything that just immediate. I've spoken to several doctors and had a couple of interesting conference calls with doctors who are trying to kind of set me straight, I guess. Well, we have three stories on our channel that are about cannabis, full extract cannabis oil being used as a treatment for brain cancer in children, young children, 2 years old, 3 years old, that kind of age, and the personal experience of the accounts from these parents is promising. We have one story. It's called Saving Gray. It's on our channel. Saving Gray. The mother talks about how her daughter, Grayson, was diagnosed at 2.5 years old with an inoperable brain tumor and given 3 months to live. Well, Grayson is 8 years old now, and the parents credit full extract cannabis oil as being the reason, or one of the reasons. Gray went through 2 brain surgeries to remove the tumor, and then it grew back and to have it removed again. And they tried all kinds of things, and full extract cannabis oil seems to have worked. And so when I try to talk to physicians about that, you get this sense that they immediately just put up a wall. They start asking questions that I'm not going to have the answers for. I wasn't doing the research. I wasn't doing the treatment. They just throw out these questions they go straight for discrediting instead of going straight for, well, tell me more. They go for, well, what other treatments were happening? How were the results measured? How, things that are just challenging the data without even having the data, really. So, or how do you know that some other treatment wasn't what caused the results? And the pro cannabis people do the exact same thing from the other side, where when we publish a story about cannabis induced psychosis, people say, well, it was probably there's probably something on the weed. It was probably spice. It was synthetic weed. It wasn't real weed, or it was laced with something, or they're making excuses to protect the weed without having any facts, just making these assumptions that protect their preconceived notions. But both sides do that. And they're never going to make any kind of connection back and forth until until they knock that off. And the side that is pro cannabis just immediately assumes anything that's critical of cannabis to be fictional, to be made up, to be something that came from uh, the liquor lobby or the pharmaceutical lobby. Gazelle says so. Yes or no to cannabis? Yeah, I'm not. I'm not making that commitment. Learn more about cannabis. Understand what's possible. The cannabis that's out there now is so much more potent than the cannabis that was out there 10, 15, 20 years ago. It is not the Woodstock cannabis. That's something that everybody does agree on. It is not the cannabis of Woodstock. So Kimberly says, "Will cannabis have my stomach hurting when I'm trying to eat certain foods?" I've never heard that, and I know that cannabis has been used as a way to generate an appetite among people that are going through cancer treatments, and so it doesn't seem likely. But I don't know. I'm not qualified to do that. So yes or no, you Gazelle, Google it. That's really just be informed. Awareness. What's missing from the whole cannabis thing is understanding. It's not there. There is a confirmation bias that people on both sides immediately throw up when you start talking to them about cannabis. Those who defend it won't hear anything negative about it. And those who are opposed to the legalization of cannabis won't won't hear anything about it having value. And of course it's not all of them. There's reasonable people out there too, but they're not the outspoken ones for sure. Wolfgang is asking, Glenn, is it difficult to get the people, mother, father, etc., who talk about the fentanyl victims? No, no, it's not. It's they come to us. The people who share these stories with us come to us. They contact us. They when we all of our storytelling summits begin with one person in the location, and once we announce the event, people start signing up, and people email me. I probably get 5 emails a week from people who have a story that they want to share. And I kind of have a standard email reply, but basically the message is okay. We've never turned anyone away. The big challenge that we face for most of them is always geography, just geography. So we're based in Houston, Texas, and if people want to come to us, we can do a story anytime. Anytime we're in town. But for the most part, the big challenge is geography. When we go to a location to record stories, we like to record 6 to 8 stories a day for a minimum of 2 days, so that when we're done with the location, we have recorded quite a few stories to make the trip as worthwhile as we can make it. And it works out pretty well. We've shot all over the country And once we announce the event, people start signing up. So no, it isn't hard, but there's a lot, especially with fentanyl. There is a lot of families out there who've lost a loved one, and so we have over 300 stories about fentanyl poisoning, and that many people die from fentanyl every 2 days, less than every 2 days. So our stories only represent a small percentage of the total number of people that have been lost to fentanyl. Main character says moderation is key. It's extremely easy to consume a high dose of THC with increased potency. Yeah, and not even be aware of it. One of the things that a lot of people embrace about legalization is that it's regulated, and so they feel like they get an extra layer of protection in legal states and in places where their source is a dispensary, and that's not the case. Just it's not. The regulations have a lot of margin for error, a lot of flexibility. That the way that the product is tested is has a lot of latitude in it. But do the research, and research is not talking to potheads. Research is not talking to some guy behind a counter in a dispensary wearing a Nirvana T-shirt. Research is genuine research. There's research about cannabis that goes back to the 1880s or before. There's documented cases of cannabis-induced psychosis that go back to the 19th century. So, not a lot, not a lot, but they're there. In there's research that was published in France in the 19th century about cannabis that has a lot of the same conclusions that research today that's being done in the United States is drawing. So Kimberly says, I almost lost my little brother, almost lost little customer to fentanyl that her brother had in their mother's cabinet 2 months ago. And that's one of the really scary things about fentanyl is that it can appear to be so benign, so innocuous. It can be in a medicine cabinet or wherever. It can just a little. It's a pill. It's a little white powder, and it is so brutally dangerous, especially if children are around. And plus, a pill looks like. No, Deborah, that's not true. A pill looks like something that's got to be kind of safe because it's a pill. Deborah, Glenn, is it true that the government owns the patent on cannabis? No, there is no patent on cannabis. That is, it's plant. And so no, the government doesn't own it. Uh, a lot of the marijuana farms that are in the United States are actually owned by Chinese businesses. Which is that ought to be a flag, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter who owns it. What matters is what the potential dangers are and understanding potential dangers is critical. It's potential dangers, just like alcohol has potential dangers, and alcohol has established dangers as well. Same with same with cannabis. The little girl thought it was her bag of candy, and so now he's doing 30 years. Yeah, yeah, that's reasonable. Seems like endanger a little kid. Why is it federally illegal then? Because it's identified as a controlled substance, as a drug. I can't answer it any better than that. So let me just give me a second here to find out a couple more links, and then it's going to be time to wrap things up here. I appreciate you folks joining us and staying with us all this time. That's cool. So where is I have a couple of, oh my goodness, what is that? Up to there. Take that away. No, that's not it. I have a link to, maybe I don't. There is some. I have some links to different research. We might have to get back to that next time. But there's a lot of data. There is links on most of the stories in our cannabis induced psychosis series. There is links to uh, uh, different different forms of different research. Library. One is a library. I can't remember the name of the organization, but a physician that we interviewed is a part of the organization, and they have a whole. They have a page on their website that is a library of different data, different research performed by different qualified researchers, physicians, scientists, that kind of thing. And there's a link in all of the cannabis stories. There is a link to different kinds of resources that have more information about the potential dangers of cannabis. Main character says, I would much rather give safe and tested drugs to addicts. We know without a doubt they will get it from illicit suppliers if we continue this war on drugs. Yeah, that's a great kind of that's the way that harm reduction organizations look at it as well. And that's a great way to look at it. It'll keep people alive without really doing a whole lot to address the problem. It's a way to maintain their life until they get to the point where they decide it's time to make a change. That's certainly worthwhile. Can save lives. Same thing with Suboxone, methadone, those kind of treatments. It gets people to that point where they can stay alive and then work on walking away from that slowly. And people, the big thing that jumps out to me. This is gonna be it. I'm gonna make this point, and then it's gonna be time to wrap things up. But the big thing that stands out to me about all of the issues involving drug addiction, whether it's fentanyl, heroin, crack, methamphetamines, cannabis, any of it, the big thing that stands out to me is the need for better understanding. We don't really understand addiction, and treatments for addiction are clouded by profit. And profit has to be a consideration, money has to be a consideration because these are businesses. If they're not generating enough money to be profitable, they don't last. They don't exist anymore. Then they're gone. So finding that balance between earning enough to be profitable without making the effort about money is a challenge for anyone in any kind of position like that. And so the it understanding addiction, we hear we hear contradicting perspectives from people a lot, and it's not that they're in conflict. They have different perspectives, and one perspective may contradict another. What I think is that the substance doesn't much matter. I've interviewed homeless synthetic cannabinoid users, people who use spice, fake weed, whatever, who will say, since I started smoking this, I've been able to quit drinking. So what that tells me is that the substance doesn't matter. When I was in high school, the drug awareness programs that they presented in school talked about how alcohol withdrawal can be fatal. And then I met people who were dealing with alcohol addiction who treated it by switching to another substance. And so that kind of contradicts what I was taught in school, which feels a little bit like a betrayal. Like they weren't really being straight with me, but I'm not sure. I know that alcohol withdrawal can lead to fatal results. So focusing on the substance isn't focusing on the problem. Focus on the problem. That's what needs to happen. Got to focus on the problem. And the problem is the demand. The problem is wanting something, wanting to self medicate. That's a great term, kind of rationalizes it or can. But feeling the need to self medicate to deal with some trauma that the user is working through, or some mental illness that using a substance helps them deal with. That's where the real problem is. You're never going to solve the problem by going after the supply. You're only going to solve the problem by making the demand go away, just like with any other business. So that's where we're going to wrap it up for tonight, folks. I am so grateful for you guys to be here with us. With us. See, I have this imaginary friend right here. Uh, I'm so grateful for you guys to be here with me, being a part of this live event. It really means a lot. And we will be having our next premiere probably Monday evening, but not sure. Not sure. It's still we're still working our way through the holiday season, and holiday season is always a little bit bizarre. Thank you, Deborah. And so probably Monday. We try to always have a premiere on Monday, but we got to have another story ready, and we're not there yet. Wolfgang Truth, thank you. Thank you for being here. So, as we wrap things up, I always like to close by reminding you guys that we are always here for you and to wish you guys happy holidays and all that good stuff. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever kind of whatever other kind of. Okay, let me see where I'm at. I see. Very well said. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Wolfgang. I hope we see you in more of these. Typically, we always do one on Monday, and always one or two through the rest of the week. But Monday is the one we really try to make consistent that people can count on. Usually around 7:30 or 8 o'clock is when we begin. And so, anyway, I keep getting distracted. So I'm very thankful. I'm looking forward to our next story Monday, and we also have a story coming up with Kia, who is a human trafficking storyteller. Who it's one of our more uh, popular human trafficking stories, I guess would be the way to put it. But Midwest Mama, hi, good to see you. We're just wrapping it up. Anyway, so we have a story from Kia coming up. Maybe that'll be the Monday one. I'm not sure. We have a fentanyl story that's just about ready to go as well. So we'll just have to see. So thank you all for being here, and we will see you all next time. Remember, you can reach out to us anytime by email at info@texas-pictures.com. You can find us on Facebook under my name, Glenn Muse, and under our company, Texas Pictures. You can also visit our website, texas-pictures.com, and on the homepage of our website, you'll find information about how to share your story. If you'd like to share a story, you'll find more information about us and our company, mailing address, telephone number, the other kinds of work that we've done, things like that. And there's a link to our merchandise store, which isn't much to it. There's some T-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, and that kind of thing. Hello, Kristen. Good to see you here. We're all going kind of late this time. We're over 2 hours long here. Anyway, so very Merry Christmas to all you folks. Thank you very much for being here, and we will talk to you next time. Good night, folks.